Paul, hello.
Hi.
Thank you for agreeing to come on the Challenging University podcast.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. See? Yeah, there's your cue. And thanks for allowing us to use your very nice offices. Lovely, courtesy of USS, we mentioned, yeah?
Yeah.
Company. Yeah.
Universities Superannuation Scheme, USS.
Okay. So I was really hoping to get you on because we had a bit of a chat, but some of the listeners might not know you. So for the listeners and viewers today and the listeners and viewers to come, could you please share your full name and what it is that you do? Your
Middle names as well, eh?
If you want, I will if you will.
No, we'll refrain from that. So, yeah, my name is Paul Foote. I'm the Head of Finance for the Investment Division here at USS. So I'm an accountant by trade.
Right. And before we get into some of what you do today, how you came to be here, I always ask people what their memories of secondary education are. So, tell me about your secondary schooling.
So I grew up in northeast London, and my secondary school, I suppose, was it wasn't the best. It's possibly is one way to describe it. From an educational point of view, I think you were probably sort of in the minority of if you tried hard and you wanted to learn. So it definitely wasn't cool to be someone that wanted to perhaps get an education. Possibly, I suppose, quite traditional in that typically the girls would probably try a bit harder, and that wasn't seen to be so bad. But the boys, it was seen as less cool to try hard. But I suppose you got a little bit more attention from the teachers if you were someone that did try hard. And I was someone that tried hard. I wanted to learn. I wanted to do well. I didn't like that sort of whole thought of not trying to get an education. And my family were very big on trying your best and getting a good education. So my dad left school at 14.
Wow.
So he was very encouraging of getting a good education. And my mum, I suppose, a little bit similar. She went to a very bad school, but she wanted to try hard and she wanted to do well. So I suppose it was instilled a little bit in me to try and do my best, if you like. But that's kind of how I am as well. But yeah, I suppose it wasn't the most of like the peer pressure piece, encouraging to try and do your best. But teaches you a little bit about way of life in that regard of navigating with different people. I suppose in that regard that there were a lot of people that weren't interested in learning and would be quite disruptive to the lessons. And then, gradually as you went on, that became less of a problem as you started to get into tiers of groups.
I'm interested in whether your parents did any sort of night school education or if they did anything afterwards, because I know that was sort of more widely available. Because if I think about some families like mine where they left school early and then it was like, but you could go to night school if you wanted to kind of add to your qualifications.
No, neither of them went to night school. I mean, my dad left at 14 and, got straight into sort of the working life. And I think, and I saw one of your videos where you say about grafting.
Yeah.
You got a graft.
Yeah.
And that was the environment that he was he grew up in. So he just, he went straight out to work and did, jobs that didn't really require you to have a qualification or anything along those lines. So, he worked in factories and, I mean, if I started to talk about how many jobs my dad has done over his life, we'd fill this whole time. I think he did, which is just sort of it's very hard to get your head around. but there was one day where I think he did 3 or 4 jobs in one day. I don't mean he had 3 or 4 jobs and fulfilled each job. He had a job, left it, went down to the job centre, or the equivalent of what it was then, got another job, then came back again because he'd left that one. And so it was 3 or 4. Wow. He'll really appreciate me sharing this this little tale about him as well. So no, he never went to night school. I mean, he did a few things where he was in like a little bit of a trade. So he was a plumber's mate for a little while. But he never learned how to be a plumber. So he did lots of sort of odds and sods and like a lot of people from that background. He worked up the meat market for a little bit of time. He drove, he was a bus driver, he was a coach driver, van driver. So no, he never did that. My mum tried hard at school, but then she went straight into work as well. So the only one that's in my family is on my mum's side. Her brother, he did some night school, I think, because he ended up working in haematology.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So he went to evening classes to do that, but no, it was never really brought up as something any of my family did.
No. Okay. So you're at school and you are trying hard, even though it's not cool. And I'm glad that you said that, because a couple of recent podcasts talked about cultural expectations. And certainly my background was it wasn't cool to study hard. And the kids that were really bright got picked on. And I look at that now and I'm like, oh my goodness, but you were more valuable if you made people laugh. Or people wanted to be around you more. This is not what I tell my children today. So what were you good at then? What were the subjects that made you go, yeah, that's why I want to work hard and do well?
I was always all right at English. Yeah, I was always okay at English. I suppose I was a bit of a generalist, really, in that I wasn't really ever terrible at anything. But I don't know if I'd say I was absolutely brilliant at anything either. I enjoyed sort of the English side, definitely. I liked science as well. History, I liked history. I was never that great at maths, which is obviously, whenever I say that, everyone says, "Oh, it's a bit odd for you being an accountant." But yeah, maths was never my strongest subject by a million miles. It was something I had to work really hard at to get to grips with, and I had a tutor as well on a Friday night, which was always really appealing. So that that helped me. But I think what it probably did for me, it went from me being probably like a lowercase B student to a borderline BA student, and I got a B in it in the end.
Oh, okay.
But I was always sort of on that cusp once I got a tutor to get in and around that mark. So so you can see my parents wanted me to do well as well. Like they, because that was a subject I sort of struggled at.
Yeah.
But I suppose, in the cultural point, I was always good at sport. And I suppose in that sense of perhaps being able to navigate the being cool but still trying hard, that probably kept me sort of all right, if you like.
Did you have trials? Did you have trials?
Yeah, what a subject. So everyone's had a trial, haven't they? Yeah. No, I was. So I played. Football was the sport that I was definitely best at. Yeah. So I played for a good local side, which David Beckham and Harry Kane. They played for called Ridgeway Rovers, and lots of the boys in that side. They were signed to pro clubs, and I played at White Hart Lane, Spurs Ground. We played against Leyton Orient, and all of those sort of things. So we had a very good side, and I went on to play semi-pro football and then amateur football association. Right. Yeah, but no, I was never quite good enough, really.
But God, that's a story in itself, isn't it? Like, wow.
Played in the FA Cup. FA Vase. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So while you were doing that, were you dreaming of a future in the city?
Yeah, always. I thought, I want to be an accountant. No, funnily enough, I wasn't. But I think, again, my parents, because the boys that the team that I played in were, it was a very high standard. And in fact, it got to a point where, the enjoyment of it wasn't necessarily at the forefront.
Right.
I think the enjoyment was winning, but the pressure you were under was quite intense.
Yeah.
So that, that was its own subject in that regard. But in terms of sort of thinking about having a career, it never really crossed my mind that I'd be a professional footballer or anything like that. It's a career that obviously, even if you get signed to a club, there's a heck of a long way to go. Even then, there's masses and masses of people that have been signed to a club, and you come up against them and you think, God, they are a really great player.
Yeah. Wow.
So it was always it was always thought of that was a nice thing to be good at, rather than that was gonna save my day, sort of save my bacon.
Okay. What did you do after secondary school then? College?
Yeah, I went to sixth form college. So there was my school wasn't brilliant, but it wasn't the worst school actually in the area. But it wasn't the best, and there was a school in the area that certainly was a lot better than the others. And when I left junior school, most of the people that I had as friends, they went to the better school in the area. Okay. And so they had a sixth form, and I went to the sixth form there, and so I got to meet up with quite a lot of people that I used to go to sort of junior and primary school with, and I hadn't seen for a long time, because they went on and did the sixth form. Yeah, so I did 3 A levels and an AS level whilst I was at the I was at the college, but I had glandular fever actually whilst I was at college. Mm-hmm. And I missed over the 2 years, I probably missed about 6 months worth of schooling. Yeah. So I was up against it in that. Not continuous 6 months, but over the duration of the 2 years, I had quite a lot of time off where I was just so poorly. Yeah. Always a good word, that poorly.
Poorly, very poorly. What did you? So because to do 3 and an AS is more than a lot of students will do. So was university discussed at that point? What were you studying? Were you on track to go somewhere else? Yeah,
no, university was always a topic of conversation, and the college was good, and I think most people that went there went on to go to university. I took a year out and then explored the university sort of path. But it was certainly at the forefront of discussions. I did of the 3 A levels, I did English literature, history, and sociology. Oh, okay. Classic accounting subject. Exactly. Yeah. So you can see the pathway to accountancy right there, can't you? It's just seamless. Although I started off doing French rather than sociology, but my French wasn't good enough, so they kind of told me that I needed to drop out where I wasn't. Wow. I wasn't good enough and pick up another subject. So sociology, put me on that path to being an accountant so easily. So that's why I took it.
Okay. So when you took your year out, what did you do that you can talk about? What did you do?
Not a lot, really. I worked in Top Man, which later became Top Shop. Mm-hmm. So I worked there kind of part time, or just a bit more than part time, to graft. Yeah. But my dad started writing poetry. Yeah. Later on in life, and he got into songwriting as well, like lyrics. Yeah. And so he's never had. He's going to really appreciate this all, isn't he? He never had like a hit single or something. He's a published poet, but But I started to, I'd been writing a few songs and things like that, and I did a bit of singing. Yeah. So I took a year out to see if I could make a go of that as a career. Wow. Yeah. And I suppose because I'm here, the answer is it didn't work out. So.
You're going to tell me that in Bulgaria you had the #1 song for 15 years.
Yeah. No, I don't think they know me out there.
Wow. Okay. So what did you do? Like circuit? Did you?
No. I had I had a few meetings. So I recorded a few songs with some different people that got to meet through my dad really at different events and different things. So I recorded with some various people, and I had a CD, and I started to market like that CD. I auditioned for some bands and stuff.
Wow.
Some of my mates don't even know this bit about my life, so this is going to be, hopefully they're not going to listen to this. So I went around and did a few bits. So I had a meeting with EMI. Yeah, was about the closest I ever got to it, and because I'd met someone at an event, and their boss was like the head of A&R. I mean, I can't remember really now, but they had who was quite significant there. So he called my manager and myself in for a meeting. Wow. We played the CD. He sat there sort of nodding, tapping. Yeah. And we were both thinking, oh my God, this is it. He likes it. He's gonna, this is gonna go well. And he turned the CD off and he went, right. I don't like your voice.
Oh, God.
I don't like the songs.
Wow.
He said, the only thing you've really got going for you is you look all right. So, I mean, there was a compliment in there eventually.
Yeah. But
so it didn't quite work out.
Right, but it's quite... So what strikes me is, like, going into like semi-professional football, but you playing with people that have gone on to become megastars, or they've been at the club. I never played with you played for.
I mean, obviously, they're both a lot older than me.
Yeah, a lot older. It's like you're their son or something. And then to, put your hand up and go, I think I could make a shot of this, and have somebody judge your work is quite a big, step to take. What do you think gave you that confidence or willingness to not fear sort of failure?
Oh, it's a really good question. Do you know what? I just don't know. I've never really thought of failure itself, just conceptually. Like, I don't really think, I always think there's a chance it's not going to work out. But you just, you've got to give it your best shot. And I liked playing football. I liked the songwriting. I probably liked the songwriting more than I did the singing. And to be fair, he probably had a bit of a point about my voice. So it wasn't probably the best. I'm going to be pushed into karaoke, something chronic now, aren't I? It's... I suppose I just want to give it my best. I just want to give it my all. And that's probably followed me throughout. Yeah. I don't think naturally I'm the most gifted academically. There's lots of people that have been far better than me academically. There were much better singers out there than me. There were much better footballers out there than me. And I never really thought of myself as being that brilliant in any of them. Clearly I wasn't that great at being a singer. But I suppose it's determination and hard work. Like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to give it my all. And that's, I suppose, what I've always been like. If I'm going to try and do something, I'm going to try and do it to the best of my abilities. Yeah. So I might not be the most naturally gifted at these things, but I've worked hard, and I am determined, and I'm pretty resilient. And when that fella said that to me about,
you look great, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the bit I took away. Yeah. But he said all those things, it really annoyed me, and I said to him, I'm going to prove you wrong. I mean, I didn't, but unfortunately, I never got to prove him wrong. But if he's listening, I've still got a chance. I've still got a chance.
There's still time.
That CD has been under many glasses. It never knocked me there. I'm not saying it didn't knock my confidence. Yeah. But my first thought was, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah. And I think that's generally how I sort of approach things. Always been a bit of an underdog, I suppose, in that regard, and that's gone on throughout my career, really. And I probably thrive on it a little bit, actually, truth be told.
And so you said you looked at some unis. Why did you decide it wasn't for you?
Well, no, I did actually go to uni. And I've always told people that I went for about 3 months to uni. So the music thing was something I really enjoyed. So I signed up for a course at a university in Cambridge, and so I went there. But actually, when I look back at the records of it, which not that long ago was at my mum and dad's, and brought out sort of some of the records there, I went for about 2.5 weeks actually.
Okay.
So I don't really actually ever sort of say that I did go to university, because I didn't really.
No.
I filled out the forms and I applied, I hated the course. And so there was quite a long period after that where I did think about going back to uni, because I did various jobs and started following my dad's footsteps. I did all these different jobs and never really sort of enjoyed any of it. Never found, I suppose, my calling.
How did accountancy come into your life? I started crying.
I suppose maybe I should.
You've done a couple of jobs.
I did a couple of jobs, and then it didn't really work for me, either of those jobs, for one reason or another. It wasn't my calling in life. And I thought about going to university. I would say go back, but I don't think really 2 weeks probably counts. So I thought about going to university, and I thought that's the best thing that I can do. I'm going to go and study creative writing, was what I had in mind, and I was going to go to a London university. Right. Kind of the English sort of theme, but the creative sort of element of me as well. And I you remember you used to get those magazines where they had various jobs in London. They used to hand them out at railway stations and in town. And there was a job in there for an accounts assistant, and it was working at Warner Brothers.
Oh wow!
And so I applied. I got the job, and unbeknown to them, I took that job. They probably don't even know this to this very day. I took that job just to earn a bit of cash before I was going to go to university. So I started to look at the UCAS forms and look at the courses that were available and everything, and just took that job with the intention to stay for 8-9 months, earn a bit of money, go to university. And then everything changed. Right. I took the job. I liked the job. And there were a few people that worked there that were studying towards their professional accountancy qualifications. So they worked, and they were going to get a professional qualification at the end of it. Because I had A levels, I could get onto the course. I had to start at the very beginning, but because if you had a degree and you had it in, if you had it in accounts, you got exemptions from loads of the papers. There were about 15 or 16 papers to get your professional qualification. But I could get on because I had the A levels. Otherwise, you had to do like a feeder course but they could last 3 years as well to get on to professional ones. So it started to get me thinking that this concept of studying but working at the same time, earning a salary. I thought the work was quite good. I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than the other jobs that I was doing. I thought, God, you can become an accountant at the end of it. And I got to see some of what those people were doing, and it looked interesting. And Warner Brothers was an interesting place to work as well. It had, I was on the films side. And so it all looked really really interesting. In fact, that's the chap who's the manager for me when I was trying to do the singing. I met him at Warner Brothers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. He worked on the film side of things.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can tell me you're an extra in like some really big blockbusters. No.
I was an extra in a film that I think Jason Donovan did that they filmed at Ministry of Sound.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
See, it's all coming out now.
Yeah,
Paul. You've got
so
singing,
many angles.
acting, football. Okay. And how long were you at Warner Brothers for?
About a year in total. But there was a chap who I played football for. He worked for Trinity Mirror.
Yeah.
And he was the head of credit control, so chasing of payments.
Yeah.
So, debt collecting basically.
Yeah.
And he said to me, look, you come work for me. I'll give you, I'll give you a salary uplift on what you were earning.
Yeah.
And I'll sponsor you to do your exams. But this was the bit that swung it for me, was that he said, look, I'll put you forward for an accountancy role itself, that required you to have a qualification, or that you would study, that you could use your study towards. I'll put you forward for any roles that come up across the whole of the Trinity Mirror Group, which was, Mirror Group newspapers, and they owned loads of different papers back when I worked for them. So I took the job.
Yeah.
I worked for him in credit control for about 6 months, and then I applied for a trainee management accountant role working for the sports division, which was really the Racing Post, is the title that everyone knows.
Yeah.
And I got the job.
Wow.
I was very lucky to get a job. And I think that's a common theme. And I have this discussion with some of the people I worked for about, you need a bit of luck on your side. And they, I think they always say, no, it's about how you apply yourself. I think in reality, it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
But it was really, he gave me, chap's name is Clint. He gave me Clint Boucher. It's just a fantastic name, isn't it?
That is a strong name.
That's a great name. He gave me a chance, to come into there. And then the chap who gave me the job at the Racing Post, a chap called Mark Francis, who was the finance director there, and he not that long ago he was still working for them as their CFO. He gave me a chance as well. But funnily enough, the more I've become involved with like social mobility and that, the more I've looked at these things, and I just thought, actually, a lot of the people that gave me a chance have come from a low socioeconomic background originally. Right. Okay. And so Clint and Mark both come from that sort of lower socioeconomic background. So, but they gave me the chance. I mean, clearly, that theme of working hard and grafting and doing my best always, that never left me, and that continued from my studies into how I applied myself at work.
So you got your professional accounting qualifications. So you became a management accountant?
Yeah, I'm a chartered management
accountant. Okay. And how long did it take you to go from kind of being new to the world of accounting to gaining your qualifications?
I think it was about 3.5 years in total.
Okay.
Yeah. You can get through it a bit quicker, but working and studying it was really,
it's a lot.
It was really hard work. Because at that point there was only Mark, myself, and one other person in our finance team. There was a wider finance team across the group, but in that sports division there was only 3 of us. So a lot of the work would fall on sort of our shoulders. There was a lot to do, and then you had this going to evening school.
Yeah.
And then before the exams, I'd have a timetable and I'd do 2 hours religiously every night, and weekends I'd do more. Again, not the best accountant in the world, but I just worked hard, and I got through them. And I can remember, because Trinity Mirror was based in Canary Wharf at the time, and I used to go to there was LA Fitness at West India Quay. Yeah. And I got talking to this fella there, as you kind of do, and and he started to do his, after I'd spoken to him a few times, he then said, "Oh, I'm doing my accountancy exams." And I was like, "Oh, that's great," you know. And he was very similar to me. He was about 6'4". He was a rower.
Right. I can see. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he went to Oxford or Cambridge.
Right. Yeah.
And built really similar to me. Massive fella. And I can remember when he did his first few exams, he came into the gym after. I said, "How'd you get on?" "Oh, it was just so easy. I can't believe how easy these exams are." And it really miffed me.
Yeah.
Really peed me off.
Yeah.
Because I'd never found any of them very easy. I'd always had to work hard to get through them. And it just so annoyed me. And he was, you know, you do the exam, you had to wait to get the marks a little while. And he was getting like really high scores. And I was getting just above the pass mark. And I was saying to him, "How much you study?" And he wasn't, you know, he was just breezing through them. And then one day I saw him and I knew he'd been doing an exam, and he never said anything. And I was like, "How'd you get on?"
Yeah.
So, it was, you know, it was this, it was that, it was rubbish, and it was all a lot of negativity. And he failed the exam. Right. And it got to a point where actually his ability or maybe his knowledge just ran out, and I suppose the hard work where he wasn't doing it caught up with him eventually. And then he dropped out of it all. Yeah.
And so how do you go from, because you've got that kind of working in like the film media industry, then you're in print industry. Is it usual for somebody to, how do you end up here when you've worked in very different parts of the sector?
Yeah, I think I'd always had a little bit of an interest in sort of financial services. So my mum, when she started to work, she worked in the city. And, you know, not saying my mum was a trailblazer, but she worked in the city in a hugely male-orientated environment back then. And, you know, and by all accounts, you know, she was very capable. And I probably follow a little bit in her footsteps in this regard of working hard and everything. And so, yeah, I think she was well regarded in that.
What did she do?
She worked in insurance, reinsurance.
Yes, yeah.
That's as much as I know.
Yeah, okay.
But she stopped all of that when my brother and I were born. And so, yeah, she then went back to work part-time when we got to a certain age. And so I suppose I'd had her that worked in insurance, but then a lot of my friends who I'd gone to college with and they went off to university, when they came back, they went to work in the city and they worked in financial services.
Right, okay.
So, you know, I'd go out for drinks with them and that, and meet them in the city and they talk about the City of London, that is. They talk about, you know, their jobs and etc. Not for very long, but they talk about a bit of it. And I suppose there was just this interest in it and interest in how financial markets work, and, you know, because it's kind of the plumbing for you know, a lot of things. Well, I suppose for society, it's part of that plumbing work, isn't it? So I had this interest in it, and I thought when I left Trinity Mirror, I was interested in exploring sort of financial services. And then everyone I spoke to said exactly the same thing to me, which was a bit of a killer blow, in that they all said I'd never get into financial services because of my background. And with that, I was just so determined to get into financial services to prove them wrong.
Right.
And on this occasion, I did manage to prove them wrong.
Because of your employment background?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and employment background and the fact that I didn't have a degree.
Yeah.
And it was quite a big thing to have a degree in financial services. So as far as they were concerned, it was mission impossible trying to get me into a financial services organisation.
Right.
And I managed to get into a US investment bank called Goldman Sachs.
Oh yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And I remember when I got offered the job, I had 9 interviews at Goldman's
Wow.
Some of them with 2 people.
Yeah.
And then we had what was, I suppose, an unofficial interview in the pub.
Right, okay.
Well, I hadn't been offered the job at that point.
Right.
So, it was an interview as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
Um,
That's interesting. Do you feel that was a, will he get on with us? Will he fit in?
I think there was a how will he fit in kind of piece. And I think they also wanted to see how I conducted myself outside of work.
Right.
I think it was very clever, really very clever.
So you got on the karaoke.
Juggling a ball.
Yeah, just all 10, hang on. Keep your piece. Yeah. Wow. So that's really interesting, because do you think there could have been an element of they're like, haha, we'll test him, and you're going, I know this is an interview.
Yeah, and I remember mentioning it to them afterwards. I said, like, no, it wasn't an interview. I never believed them. It was definitely an interview.
And how did you kind of
I'm a Tottenham fan, and Tottenham were playing, and it was on the screen in the pub as well.
Oh, wow.
Playing against Arsenal in a cup game.
Right.
And so it was, I was like, oh my God, this is a real test here. Yeah.
So how did you combat that? Like you say, people's prejudice against not having a degree. What was it that helped you demonstrate to them that it really wasn't, a big deal?
I don't know what it is that I've been able to do. What I should say, I suppose, is, and this goes right up until my job here, is that even to this very day, it not having a degree still comes up.
Right.
My educational background still comes up. My GCSEs are not phenomenal.
Right.
My A-levels are not phenomenal. And obviously I haven't got a degree. And even though explicitly now people don't say it,
right.
But there's still so many job adverts where you see must have a degree.
Right. Sure, that's not allowed anymore.
Yeah, degree educated.
Wow.
That type of thing. It still comes up, but there were so many jobs along the way that just weren't interested in me because of that, because of the degree, and then obviously transitioning to financial services weren't interested in me because maybe a mixture of both, because I didn't have the background and I didn't have the degree. But the other one, of course, is that when I did get an interview, my accent, the accent bias, and I could just, the amount of times I could see that someone wasn't going to give me a job because as soon as I spoke, and my accent was probably stronger. Yeah. And as time's gone on, it's probably not quite as strong as it used to be. Which will probably make a few people laugh that are listening to this, if anyone's listening to it, of course.
Millions.
Yeah, all your followers. But I went for so many interviews. Certainly at, I can remember one at a large banking group, and I can remember speaking. I could just see I can remember it to this very day, his body language completely changing, and I just knew then that I hadn't got the job. So I don't know what it is that, I suppose, why did Goldman's give me a chance? Well, I don't know. But I went in the interviews. I suppose I've always been a bit passionate about what I do, and that's always something that people have commented on. You can tell that he's keen as mustard, that boy. Yeah. That I think the enthusiasm that I have for it, I've always been told that comes out when I'm in an interview, and I think that maybe Goldman's, they just thought a bit different. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to do an advertisement for Goldman Sachs here, but I owe a lot to the people that interviewed me, and for me to get through the 9 and not get a black ball through the process, not get a rejection. It was tough by its very nature. So just their thinking a little bit in that regard, to give someone a chance. And it wasn't just one person like I suppose it had been previous to that. it was a number of people across a very large organisation, and not that I know their backgrounds of everyone that interviewed me, but I can remember a number of them that interviewed me, and I'm pretty sure they were all degree educated people and yeah, they gave me a chance.
And how do your experiences inform your own hiring practices? Any feedback you give within the organisation on when you're looking to, bring people into the team?
I think that I'm on this sort of mission to pay back a little bit, if I'm honest, because once I got to a point in my career where I was responsible for a team and I was responsible for the structure of that team, I've generally created a junior role, to come in, and not always, because I like to think I haven't got that bias, but I become very open-minded to people that have maybe not got that real polished background. From an accountancy point of view, the amount of roles that you see, as you rightly say, there's not so many that say about the degree now as there used to be. But Big Four experience, like all of those Big Four, the amount of job adverts that had that and still do have that is ridiculous. And I always think that I don't think there's a huge amount of people out there that come sort of through the ranks like I did. And I think the experience that you gain from that is invaluable. And that's not to diminish or dismiss the Big Four or accountancy practice and the experience that you get there, because I've worked with and I've hired people from that background, and you get some brilliant people come through. But it's not a guarantee that you're going to be brilliant just because you come from that background. And I think that I wouldn't choose my history of career. If I had a chance to go back, would I do anything different? No, I think what I did, it was invaluable to me to learn all of that stuff. To be an accounts payable and receivable clerk, like I know how fundamental that is for me to do my job now. And that is such an important task in the whole, because if that breaks, it's all well and good having a whizzy PowerPoint and chart, but if the stuff that's in it is wrong, it's the deck of cards just coming down onto you. So I think that my hiring practices are probably that I like to give people a bit of an opportunity, or I'm very open-minded to it, and I often create a role that's junior, and I suppose really I'm looking for me. Aren't I? I'm looking for me when I was, 10 years ago, coming into that job.
You are Clint now.
Just without the amazing name, Paul Foot, Clint Boucher. Not quite the same.
Tell me, or us, a little bit about the social mobility piece that you do now, because you touched on it earlier.
So I've been at USS for just shy of 4 years now. So coming up quite quickly to 4 years. And ED&I has been something that's been on the agenda here since I joined, really. Become more of a, I suppose, a priority more recently. I think probably USS will wrap my knuckles for saying that, because it's always been a priority. It's just maybe it's got a bit more traction. But I was in a meeting and I was sat next to our chief HR officer, and he was talking about the various networks, and I've always had a big mouth, and I just opened my mouth and said, well, I didn't even know the term social mobility at this point, and that's April of this year.
Right.
And I said to him, where's the network for your background, as in like where you've grown up? That it was literally that, and Kevin said it was important, etc. And then he emailed me and he said, that discussion we had, how would you like to set up the network for social mobility?
Yeah.
So yeah, put me in a bit of an awkward spot, didn't it, really?
Oh no, you had to do it.
So I had to do it, yeah.
Okay.
So first of all, I had to find out what the term social mobility meant. So I did a lot of research on that, and sociability, found out that Sociability Day, one of the other network heads informed me that there's a thing called Sociability Day in June 15th, I think it is. And I spoke to various people, including obviously EY, and I spoke to yourself, didn't I? KPMG were fantastic.
Yeah.
So lady there, Jen, she was just brilliant, and she gave me so much time based in their Liverpool office, and we have offices in Liverpool here, so I spend a bit of time up there because finance is up there as well. She gave me lots of her time. Lots of people just they gave me time, just as you did, and I managed to launch the network back on the 15th of June. So yeah, we got it off the ground from being asked in April of this year, and managed to get it all off the ground and did an event for it.
Yeah.
In our Liverpool and London offices with Jen, who's the co-chair of the Social Mobility Network for KPMG. We launched it there. So it's always been something, I suppose, that's been close to my heart because of the fact that I know how much it's impacted me, my background, and the educational piece, and my accent, etc., and how challenging at times it's been, and I've always felt it's perhaps something that doesn't get, or hasn't historically got, as much publicity as perhaps some of the other networks that are in the ED&I sphere. So so it's quite close to my heart in that regard. And obviously, I've touched upon a bit of my family's background, and my dad coming from an exceptionally poor background, and my mum coming from a very poor background as well. It's been something that I feel quite passionate about.
So, if you can talk about this, I don't know, what's next? Don't want to set the horses running, but what's next for you?
Yeah, well, good question. I don't really know, is my honest answer. But I suppose I've never had, in sort of my career today, I've never had like, in X amount of years, I want to be this, I want to be that. I've been a finance director. I look after the finance function for our investment here. I suppose next on my hit list is to be CFO.
Yeah.
But I'm very open-minded to being, to moving into perhaps a COO role or something like that. But yeah, I've not got any kind of defined plans in that regard. I think I clearly am an ambitious person, and I try hard. So that's not stopped. That's not changed.
There's more to do.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny because like when you asked me to be on this and to interview me, my first question, why do you want to interview me? Like, what's so special about me? And I've listened to some of your podcasts and some of the people you've had on there, and I think, wow, like they've really done stuff. Like there's that chap Sol who
wow.
I mean, God, talk about a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
When you said it, I just thought, well, what have I done? Like, I haven't really done anything. So I still feel like, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's what keeps me sort of progressing, is that I always think there's more I can do. There's more to be done. There's more I want to learn. I like doing different things. I like learning. So even in financial services, people say you've got to have FS experience. Clearly, I don't believe that's necessary for all of the roles. There comes a point in time where clearly it's very, very helpful. But every role that I've gone into in financial services, I've never had any background in those industries within financial services. So from Goldman's, I went to the London Stock Exchange. I knew diddly squat about stock exchanges, how they worked, and it's gone on to be a completely different beast to when I worked for it. Then I went to Close Brothers Group and I started out in their trading arm called Winterflood. And yeah, I'd worked for the stock exchange and I'd been the finance person for their capital markets, but I didn't really, this was trading with them taking the risk on their books. Like the stock exchange is just it's a party in the transaction, if you like. So this was completely different kettle of fish to what I was used to. And then from there, I went to the banking arm of Close Brothers and I worked in the property lending side of things as the FD for their property lending division. I mean, lending, I'd never done anything like that before, and certainly not something as sort of specialist as property and all the nuances that go with that. And all of a sudden I was on, they had two boards at the property side of thing, and I was on both of them. And it's like, oh my God, like I think part of the reason why I work hard as well is because I feel like perhaps I've got this sort of complex where I think I'm a bit of a pretender being there, and that I don't like it when I'm not, I don't know what I'm talking about or what's going on around me. So I try to immerse myself in it. And again, each of those career moves, I've been very lucky that people have given me the opportunity to go and work there. There's a number of people at Winterflood that I could thank for what they did for me, and because really that changed my career at Winterflood. That completely changed it. That where I went from being part of the finance function to running it, that transformed things. So each of that way along, people have really helped me out, and yeah, I owe a lot to a lot of those people. So yeah, I don't really feel like the job's done just yet. I've got a bit more to go, plenty more to learn, I think.
Right. Wow. You talked about people giving you an opportunity, and you've offered opportunity to other people. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. It's been